You know that in the 90s, the Animaniacs were all the rage, totally captivating people with their iconic old school, new school blend of comedy. While they were rising to fame alongside the other greats of their time, shows like Freakazoid were coming and going, totally getting overlooked in favor of those that already made it. Today we're gonna freak out with a retrospective look at why Freakazoid deserved better, right after this killer track by Sam Swinnerton.
Let's go back in time, we can just hit rewind. What a terrific notion, it's cartoon commotion.
Hiya friends, I'm Cade, your favorite cartoon weirdo, and this is my banjo-playing little buddy, my pet pig Jiggy. Together, we rewind to the tunes of yesterday in the 80s and 90s for a brand new perspective in your life nowadays. Coming to you live 2 times a month on Facebook and YouTube. You can find all our links over on one word, cartooncommotion.com. It'll be linked wherever you're hearing or listening or seeing our show right now. Real quick, just to let everyone know who's here. We are brought to you by the sensational world of the Cereal Box Network. Occasionally, I guest on their main show, and my guest today has also been a featured guest of theirs. That show's called Back of the Cereal Box, and that's hosted by the magical Saturday morning magician, Johnny Beyond. That's always a lot of fun to catch, like the good old days with Saturday morning cartoons. Joining us on this episode is the King of Fanatics, the prime fanatic George Buehler of Fanatic Forum, another show on the Cereal Box Network. He's been dubbed the prime fanatic for his extensive knowledge of pop culture and his high levels of enthusiasm for those geeky passions. Hiya, George!
Hey, everybody. Happy Saturday. Cade, it's an absolute pleasure to be here, man.
It's a pleasure to have you. I'm so excited. I've been looking forward to this for a long time.
Me too, man. I'm pumped. Man, I like hanging out with you anyway. I love the show, but we get to talk about one of my all-time favorite cartoons. And of course, I've got my colors on today here.
I see that. I see. That's a Jiggy. That's
yes,
a Jiggy
sir.
on your shirt.
My
That's
boy.
awesome.
Oh, yes. Hey, good to see you, Jiggy.
I just think he's so excited to see his face on a shirt. That's awesome. And I love it. It came out nice. I'm so glad that you got that. That's awesome, man.
Yep, I'd wait for to be on the show to debut the shirt because I've had it hanging in the closet for a couple of weeks waiting to go here. So, yeah.
I'm ready to freak out about Freakazoid, but first, friends here live, you can join us in the chat with comments and thoughts that you might have at any time, and we'll have moments during the show where we can bring those up on screen to discuss them together. So get in the chat with those comments already. I actually see a few right now. We got Nerd of the 21st Century saying, hey, I think it was stunning. Thanks to Paul Rugg and Tom Ruger. Hiya, Nerd of the 21st Century. It was stunning. I guess that is a word that you could use to describe it. Nerd of the 21st Century also says it does deserve better. Yes,
amen
indeed.
to that. Yeah.
That's part of the reason why we're talking about it tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Toy Stalker from toystalker.com says good evening.
Hey, Toy Stalker.
This is very much like, yeah, you know what I'm going for. All right, so if you want to get in on the chat, we'd love to bring up your comments and get talking with you. But
all right.
Before we can talk about Freakazoid, we have got to kick things off with a breakdown. So let me pull up a picture. This is Dexter Douglas.
Nerd computer ace.
That's exactly the direction I'm heading there. So let's get the breakdown music going. All right. Check out Dexter Douglas, Nerd Computer Ace. When surfing on the internet, zapped in cyberspace, he turned into the Freakazoid, his superhero identity, which we spend more time getting to know than Dexter, and who also acts as a separate identity from the teenager entirely most of the time. This cartoon first aired on Kids WB from September 9th of 1995 and wrapped up in 97 episodes for a total of 2 seasons. Wrapped up in 97 for a total of 2 seasons. And exactly 24 episodes. That's where I'm like, it didn't have 97. The first season was designed a bit more like Animaniacs, with segments featuring other parody superheroes like the Huntsman and Lord Bravery, and even weird one-off bits featuring lawn gnomes. This cartoon was a mishmash of literally anything that might be funny. It utilized randomness and didn't follow the rules on purpose, in a manner that I'd like to call a symphony of insanity. Now, Animaniacs could definitely be compared to this, but I'd actually say that it had a world of differences in its type of humor, but we'll go over that in a little bit later on. So stay tuned.
Look at that breakdown music, man. Nice jam.
Correctamundo, little buddy. You can now strum that banjo of yours and take us right into our fantabulous Freakazoid conversation. Friends, prepare yourselves because this is our main topic. Was Freakazoid insecure? Okay, so Jiggy and I believe that the first episode of Freakazoid totally provides us with a few key signs of how it couldn't really stand alongside its fellow Warner hits of the great Tom Ruegger era, at least with a supreme level of confidence. But before I go over those notes that we've collected for you all, George, what do you personally remember best about Freakazoid overall? The show, the characters, the whole shebang?
For me, what really attracted me to it, I love absurd humor, and Freakazoid is nothing but absurd. So I love that. I love me some obscure pop culture references. This entire series is littered with them, especially the first episode. We just got all kinds of crazy pop culture stuff in there that's basically stuff before my time even, let alone the younger viewing audience. So that was a lot of fun. But being a comic fan, I kind of recognized some of the roots to Freakazoid's character and appreciated that a lot more too. But this is just, it was a show for me that just clicked from the beginning. I was already an Animaniacs fan. And then when this debuted, I'm like, okay, this is my cartoon.
It just totally messed with you, man. That's awesome.
It really did. Yeah, absolutely did.
That's awesome. Because most of the time you don't hear that. You hear a lot of people that are just like, what's that? What are you talking about? I have no idea.
No, this was like, just from the word go, I was like, oh, yeah.
Word, man. Alrighty, I can dig it. Cosgrove for me was always a favorite of mine personally. Sadly, we did lose the great Ed Asner in 2021. He was fundamental to this series, in my opinion. I'm really not sure that it could be done the same way again without him. Besides him, or actually including him, would you say that this cartoon stood out among the other lineup of the WB tunes in the 90s?
It really was, because, of course, at this time, you still had the great popularity of Batman the Animated Series. And, of course, probably by this point, it merged into the Batman and Robin adventures. So this felt like an anti-Batman, because you had a ridiculous superhero, and then you had a cop who'd obviously been doing the job for a really long time, but he would much rather go to ride go-karts, or let's go get a mint, or let's hey, there's a popsicle convention in town. Want to go? I would much rather not prevent crime and then go do fun stuff. So that's funny. Cosgrove to me.
It's funny how Cosgrove had two things that very much related to bears. You got a bear on a motorcycle, and then you got the honey convention. They had a whole honey convention, and he was just loaded with honey.
Well, I just love it because I don't think this was the first episode. I think this may have been maybe second or third episode. But yeah, there's literally hey, you want to go get a mint? And they go to it looks like a store that sells mints. I don't know if they're just literally just getting a breath mint, or if there was some kind of they're getting a creme de menthe or something. Some kind of.
That was the first episode, and
okay, it was the first episode. Okay.
Yeah, and it's such a strange. I felt the same way. I was like, what when you say a mint? We're not talking money. We're not talking a single little itty bitty mint, because his belly was large.
Yeah, I think that added to it as well. It's how many mints did they eat, or how big was that mint? Yeah, it's like, what are we talking about here?
Because he was like, oh, that was a good mint.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I've gone to candy shops where they make the hard candy there, and you see before they chop them down to little mints, it is one big mint.
So maybe they just get the where the starting point, or
Yeah, they didn't you have to chop it down. It's like just give me the big wad of mints there. It looks like it's bigger than a football or something. It's like okay.
Okay, doke. Yeah, to me, it totally stood out in comparison to the other cartoons of the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course, it does have that same level of personality and charm that Tom Ruegger and Paul Rugg gave to all the WB tunes of the 90s. But this one had a whole lot more random power to work with. And I think that's partially why a lot of people didn't quite connect with it like the other hit attractions. Now, why don't we go over those pesky little insecurities that Freakazoid had back in its day? George, you're probably over there thinking, Freakazoid was anything but insecure. He burst into the gym of Harry Connick Jr. High School in the first episode, belting out a load of Jerry Lewis impressions, while taking down the baddie known as Cave Guy, the intelligent brute, and still managing to scold everyone who didn't take his alter ego Dexter Douglas to the dance.
Yeah.
And I do have a screenshot of that. It's him scolding Steph for not taking Dexter to the dance. If anything, Dexter was the insecure one, and you're totally right. You're totally right. I'm in agreement with you and your statement that you didn't make, because this retrospective conversational essay on Freakazoid is not about him personally. No, we are talking about the show. Let's rewind.
Interesting.
I just realized something. We didn't start the background music, so let's do that.
Oh yeah, sure.
That's a good starting point. That's a good starting point. Okay, so like a therapist might say, this goes back to their childhood or their youth.
Yeah.
What I mean to say is, I believe that the tune's insecurities go back to its origins, sort of pulling it into a couple different directions. Firstly, George, did you know that originally this was planned as a much darker cartoon in the vein of Batman the Animated Series?
No kid! That I actually did not know.
That is true. In the production, it was supposed to be darker. It was, intended to be a darker cartoon, and it totally makes sense because Bruce Timm, a creator on Batman the Animated Series, was originally a creator on this. Him and Paul Dini.
Yeah.
They were both in on it. And I got another screenshot from the first episode.
Yeah.
Where Batman's brought into the picture for a one-off gag. So Bruce Timm crafted the original design for Freakazoid himself. And that didn't really change. He even took some of that as inspiration for the animated version of DC's Creeper later on.
Okay. Yeah.
But that's Batman the Animated Series. That didn't even come into play until after the final season of Batman the Animated Series with the Creeper episode, where he gets turned into the Creeper through the Joker serum. I guess it's serum. It's a vat.
Yeah. Yes. There was liquid inside of it, so yes.
He fell into it just like Joker would have. And a friend of ours, John Ellis, on Facebook commented yesterday on how Tim had once said in an interview that his original pitch for the show was actually Joker as a good guy. But
interesting.
That's why they wound up doing Creeper that way later on. So that whole Joker tie-in thing, that was all because that was the initial pitch of Freakazoid.
Interesting. Well, I was going to say, Creeper always was kind of depicted as a Joker that was a good guy. He was definitely an unhinged hero.
Definitely.
So yeah, that makes sense. Okay. But yeah, that's interesting. I didn't realize that was actually initially going to be a darker show.
It was.
Beforehand.
It was originally pitched as basically think of it as if it was the same tone as Batman the Animated Series, but with a Joker-themed hero.
Yeah, I've really got to say they did better going the way they did with the show, because I think this may have not even got off the green room, or not. No, I'm talking about the pilot floor, basically. This may not have got
the plane wouldn't have even flown.
I don't think so. Yeah, I just don't see that working.
I mean, I guess closer to the mask a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, the thing with Freakazoid is that there's some folks who are familiar with the show always talk about how, he's very similar to Deadpool. He's very similar to Deadpool now, but Deadpool in the 90s, when basically this cartoon was out, was not how Deadpool is today. That character had some evolution. He didn't get that way until like the 2000s. Freakazoid is basically Mike Allred's Madman, because Madman is a unhinged superhero. He's aware of the fact that he's in a comic book, but still goes out and does superhero things. He has superpowers, but his power set is extremely unclear. And he runs around
very comparable to Freakazoid.
Yeah. And he runs around in basically a white bodysuit that kind of looks like pajamas, and his hair sticking out.
I'm just trying to figure out where I've heard of something like this before.
Also, Freakazoid has basically straight up pulled a gag that Madman would do on a regular basis, with the basically sticking his arms out, act like he's flying and making wind noises. Madman totally would do that stuff.
That is, I mean, honestly, I'm not even mad. Pun intended.
Yeah, I think even Paul Rugg even said, Paul Rugg, even said that he took inspiration from Mike Allred's comics. So he's even come out, but yeah.
I'll definitely have to look into that, because, I don't think I've read an issue of that at all, but I've definitely, just the description just kind of makes me excited, because it feels like more Freakazoid in my life.
Yeah, they haven't done any Madman books in a while. He was more of the 90s, but there was a series called Crossover that came out about a couple years ago, and Madman made appearances in that series. So,
I did see something about that. I did back when I was in that sphere. But, so, the whole reason it was kind of de-darkified was Spielberg wanted this to go in a more comedic direction, ditching all of that serious superhero stuff, and the tonal shift was kind of huge for them. I think that was a major contribution to that rough start that this cartoon had.
Absolutely.
So, just because it's such a massive tonal shift. Rightio, Jiggy. Jiggy just reminded me that I did message Tom Ruger about this, and he told me that from his own words, were very confident about Freakazoid. He said that the show was doing well, and they were sort of, in a quote fashion, on the bubble, as he put it, about where it was going. So, what the network would do with it if they would get picked up for a third season. Which basically means that they were unsure if it was going past this second season that they had. Nonetheless, though, they were confident. Okay, so I'm not going to say that he was wrong. I'm not saying that he was wrong at all. This was essentially his show.
Yeah.
But I don't think that the insecurities were really about how confident the show was in its second season. This was a lack of independent confidence from the very start of the show. The very start. The first season copied Animaniacs with its segments. It had 3 in total. Dance of Doom. No, I'm talking about the first episode. Dance of Doom, Freakazoid and Friends, and Handman.
Yeah.
The bit titled... I know, Handman. The bit titled Freakazoid and Friends was a shot-for-shot remake of the Animaniacs theme song. Do you remember that, George?
Yes, I do. It's time for Freakazoid and Friends.
The insanity never ends. So the entire intro, but redone with Freakazoid characters, and even I got a screenshot here of Freakazette.
Freakazette, yeah, who that was her only appearance.
I know, never used after this.
Never used, yeah.
She was sort of like a throwaway gag, and did you know that this actually became sort of a legend of the fan base?
No kidding, I did not know.
Yeah, so as seen in this screenshot here, she was given the full name in this song. Don't forget Freakazette. and it was written out. But then she was never used again. So, but like, yeah, that's where it kind of started. Like, a lot of people are gonna like, when's she gonna be in an episode? And she's never in. And I know they did that on purpose, but who do you think this could have been, George? Maybe his girlfriend Steph?
Oh, totally. Because I mean, the blondes, you know, and it even kind of looks like her face a little bit too. So
it kind of does. It's like if she put on the costume and was just kind of like joining him like in crime fighting.
Yeah, or like some kind of power swap, like she took over the powers for a bit because Dexter couldn't for some reason or something, you know?
Some kind of like electrical storm like they did in Lois and Clark when he swapped powers. Oh, man.
Yep, totally.
That would be epic. That would be epic.
But one gag that this intro offered us our first glimpse at, there would be a gimmick, basically a concert gag for the entire series, our friend Emmett Nervin.
Oh, yeah. See, I don't have a screenshot. I should have got a screenshot of him, but I'll put it out there on Facebook later on. So Emmett, he's like a cameo in I think he's even in the intro. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, so there's always, at least every episode will at least have one appearance of Emmett Nervin because he's always in the intro. But then basically it's the thing of like, how many other times throughout the episode can you spot Emmett? And he never says anything. He's just this weird looking little dude that's like, he's like, you know, he's just there, and that's all. He's just there. So,
and I think there was a time where I'm not sure, I can't recall, but I think there is a time in the credits where they actually number the amount of times he was mentioned in the episode or brought.
They do that every episode.
Okay, so like there is a tally out there. So somebody go out there and see if you can match that tally, because that would be fun.
And also, you know how they like to use like fake actor names that sound like they're names from the 50s. Kip Tuffington and Wiener Mercator is the Hopping Woman and whatnot.
Yeah.
Some of those names will also pop up in the credits. So, and it's very obvious that these are fake names, but their fake names will also pop up in the credits as well. As another running gag. But yeah, you can always get Emmett Nervin tallies at the end of the credits. So there's actually, I think the third episode cheats, because it says there's 2 appearances of Emmett, and the whole episode you only see him in the intro, but then they get to the credits and boom, they do like a last minute one scene.
I remember that.
Yeah, so they cheat the third episode. So.
But you know, I mean, you gotta love that attention to detail, though. I mean,
you really do. I mean,
that's incredible.
That's be a smart fan to catch that one, but yeah,
they're like, haha, we got ya.
No, it's like there wasn't 2. Where was 2? It's like, oh, come on.
Okay, Jiggy is reminding me once again we need to check the comments. We're getting some live comments.
Yes, we do.
Oh, there's a lot of them. Hiya, friends. Hiya, Mr. B-Man. He says, love the Jiggy shirt. Where can I get something like that? Well, I don't know. Oh, me?
That's what I got.
You're pointing to me. You can get one over on cartooncommotion.com. One word. There's a merch section towards the bottom of the page. You go there. There's a whole store of these shirts out there, and Jiggy is available. So if you want a Jiggy shirt, head on over to cartooncommotion.com.
There's more than one style, too, folks. So I just selected the one that has Jiggy on it because I got to represent.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Jiggy loves you for it. And... go ahead.
Oh, so one of these days, I got to tell you about the story when I initially first met Jiggy at a bluegrass convention, hanging out in the hotel lobby after hours when all the musicians are hanging around, and he's jamming with like Ralph Stanley and Earl Scruggs and all these like bluegrass legends and holding court. Jiggy, it was amazing.
Jiggy, have you like kept all this from me? Okay, we'll talk later, buddy. We'll talk later, because I had no idea this even happened.
I'm telling you, folks, Jiggy's musical talent is not showcased enough on this show. So I'm not throwing you on the bus, Cade, but Jiggy's a master banjo player here, folks.
He is. He's a self-taught banjo player, and he's just. I mean, I find him often sitting in front of the TV listening to that theme song of like every opening to every cartoon we watch over and over again. And then he comes to me and he's just got this amazing presentation. And I have to give it to the everyone, because it's just he puts so much work into it.
He does.
You gotta love what he does for the show. We love you, Jiggy.
And
we love you.
And just the fact that how fast he can pick with hooves, that's technically impressive right there, folks. So if you know anything about playing a banjo, that's right there. Tip of the cap to you, Jiggy.
Well, we got more comments. Sherry Edge says, hey, Cartoon Commotion. Hey, George, Jiggy.
Hey, Sherry.
Oh, and you too, Cade.
Poor Cade. You're an afterthought on your own show.
Oh, I'm not worried about it. I love that people love Jiggy. I love Jiggy, so I don't, no biggie.
Jiggy's
Aubrey
says, I think that rhymed.
Aubrey says, hiya. Aubrey,
hey,
how you doing? She is a co-host on the Back of the Cereal Box podcast now. She's doing great. Love her research. Very extensive and awesome.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, another new friend of the Cereal Box Network.
And Nerd of the 21st Century says, favorite part for me is when Freakazoid spoke French.
Qui occupe la fromage?
Who got the cheese? Sherry Edgen says, so glad you're talking about the super funny Freakazoid. Can't wait to hear your thoughts. Love it when Cade and George join their superpowers. Yeah, if we could do a bro fist right now, we would. You're gonna punch the wrong side of the screen.
Man, my spatial thing is always mixed up. I've done this stuff for years. How can I still not get it? But there you go. So.
It's like a messed up mirror, George. A messed up mirror.
It really is. Now, if we're Wonder Twins, who's Zad and Jaina? Because who gets to turn into a pail of water and who gets to be a tiger? So I just want to know that one.
Well, I mean, we'll talk about that later. I don't have the time to psychoanalyze us and figure that out right now. Speaking of comics, Legion of Comics is here, and he says they're both inspired from DC's Ambush Bug. Do we have a rebuttal for this, George?
No, he's absolutely correct. Yes, Ambush Bug. I'm not sure if that was a direct influence, but definitely there's been a lot of parallels drawn between the two. Yeah, Ambush Bug is definitely a very wacky, zany, fourth wall breaking, referencing character. Also very aware of the fact that he's in a comic book. A lot of times when he's in the comic book, much to the confusion of the other heroes he may be appearing with.
I loved Ambush Bug in Batman the Brave and the Bold. Did you catch him in that?
Yeah.
That was like the very couple last episodes, but it was phenomenal. I mean, after that, I think I would love an entire series of him. So
I'm surprised they've tried from time to time over the years, I think, but he's just kind of one of those better off just popping in weird places sort of thing.
Maybe a short run of comics. That would be cool.
Maybe, yeah. I think they've done that. I can look it up, I'm sure. I mean,
they've probably done. I gotta know what that's. Legion of Comics says, yes, Cade, what a great show. I don't know what this is a response to, but thank you. He's laughing. We're
talking about Freakazoid.
Oh, you mean the Brave and the Bold? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
The OMAC episode was my favorite Brave and the Bold. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at all these comments and I'm thinking we have more to talk about, so we'll come back to that later.
Sure.
But that is awesome. Keep those comments coming. Thank you, folks, for being here. We appreciate it. Alrighty, back on track. Back on track. Oh, the comment's still on the screen. Hang on. There we go. Now we're getting back on track after I get the comment off the screen. So this song break part of the show, let's go back to what we were talking about with the Freakazoid and Friends song.
Mm-hmm.
In this episode, you'd probably consider it, or most people would consider it, their signature humor. Nothing more than a goofy teasing of the creative artists behind the show and the executives in charge of it. They really like to tease those executives.
They do, yes.
But this one song pushed it so much further by basically straight up Doom Talk. Like, they gave it Doom Talk lyrics. on the show itself, did you catch this at all in your rewatch of the first episode, George?
Well, I think there's nothing that really struck me as like complete doom and gloom sort of thing like that. But they've definitely had a history of nipping at their own executives. You know, I mean, even Animaniacs would do this. Freakazoid's done this. Even like when they would start doing some of the other spin-off shows, like the Good Feathers, sort of thing like that. There's a lot of like inside jokes and stuff there. So
there are.
But tell me what you're referencing here with this, with the Doom talk thing.
I'm just excited to point this out. This is like,
please.
This is some deep stuff, man.
I like your different things on here. Your different points that you've made on your shows over the years. So I'm excited to hear this one.
Oh, thank you. I like the deeper analysis stuff. You know.
Absolutely.
So they actually say that their scripts make no sense. The show is really dumb. The ratings are most definitely going down the toilet, as well as the network's revenue. Now, like, look at this picture here on screen with the ratings and revenues, and he actually draws the chart to the toilet. And it goes right into and he makes like a funny little face, like, oh, they're going down the potty.
And there's Spielberg right there, front and center.
I love it, and he loved it when they would reference him in the show, and he loved making cameos, and that's always great. Because like in Animaniacs, he actually had to sign off on everything that they wrote, and I think it's great that they were kind of doing those little plugs, little teases to his involvement in the show. And he loved it too. But moving on, the ratings were going down the toilet, the revenue was going down the toilet, and they're all totally not only up a creek without a paddle, but also the boat is leaking and sinking. Leaking and sinking. Let that sink in.
This is just good. This is just good self-effacing humor.
Right.
So I don't see this as being, doom and gloom or anything. I just see this as like just good poking fun at ourselves, because we kind of know that we're coming in out of left field with this show from the word go. So it's like, this is not going to fire on every cylinder for everybody here. So let's get real here. Like, this is probably going to fail here, but we're going to have a lot of fun.
Right. That, honestly, I know this. This was a gag, and I'm not looking at it as though they knew what it was going into it. Like, that was the plan from the beginning. To be perfectly transparent with everybody, I'm positive that this was all intended as nothing more than a joke and shouldn't be taken too seriously. That was the reason that this cartoon did anything. But think about this for a sec. Just ponder this for a minute. Freakazoid was going up against the likes of Pinky and the Brain, airing it at the same time as their first episode. They were neck and neck.
Why?
Because Pinky and the Brain had a stronger connection with the audience. Pinky and the Brain had already established itself in Animaniacs, so it didn't need something. It had an anchor. Sure. And so, like, it would hold. But Freakazoid was coming in, and it was using Animaniacs to connect with people, and I think that was brilliant. But it did it in a way that was almost talking itself down, like, oh, these guys are doing it right, and we're not going to be able to fit that bill. In the land of 90s Warner Brothers tunes, this was basically the middle child just begging for attention from anyone who might give it the time of day.
Well, that may have been a reason why it just appealed to me. Not that I'm a middle child or anything like that, but just, again, I love good self-effacing humor. I'm a big Conan O'Brien fan. He was, just kind of getting started around this time the show came out. And he does a lot of absurd self-effacing humor, constantly talking about he's going to get fired, every episode that he does because they're doing some, childish stuff or whatever else. So it just, for me, it all just kind of fit in with my style of humor that I like. I appreciated the jokes for what they were. So I didn't take it as anything serious or, they're pretending their fate of doom or anything like that. It was just kind of like, we know where we are. We're very self-aware.
Right. I just think looking back, like, part of me thinks that this song portion of the first episode was the team kind of admitting that they were a little mixed up about things. I mean, think about how it started, where it was intended to be darker, how it was intended to be like Batman the Animated Series, and now that's been pulled out from underneath them. They have something new to work with. Paul Rudd came in the mix, not even planning on being Freakazoid, but his audition or like example that he did for everyone else was so good that when Spielberg caught it, he's like, that's the guy. And so Spielberg wanted him to, and he's admitted this on Twitter publicly, that he was just kind of cast almost accidentally, and perfectly, mind you. I mean, he's an amazing Freakazoid, but part of me feels like they were kind of waving the white flag a little bit to start with, you know? Like this picture portrays Freakazoid doing in that song. He's like giving up already, even though we just got started. And I totally still think that it was smart to connect this with Animaniacs, that audience. It's just that at the same time, it just felt so negative in the way that it presented itself. Like it was telling us up front, the show is going to sync with those ratings. And it kind of did eventually sync with their ratings.
It did, but again, like I said, it all depends of where you're taking, the humor and how you're taking it. And for me, it's just kind of like, okay, yeah, I get the joke here. Because, like, this is the weird kid, and I'm a weird kid, so we can spell our own. And frankly, I'm cool with that. So, I like that this is a show that's talking to me. Just being strange, weird humor, basically making very odd, even outdated references. I mean, little kids probably knew a little bit of, maybe who Jerry Lewis was because, like, the telethons and stuff like that. But, like, to go full on Jerry Lewis impersonations, like when he's at the dance trying to get, busting in and trying to save the kids, and like, everybody quiet, gonna make a sound, all that stuff. It's like, who does this in a children's cartoon?
I can't tell you how many times I can't tell you how many times I've referenced that in real life. And I accidentally said Jerry Springer in the opening because of that one time where he pulls over, I think it was like a dog catcher, and he gives him a ticket to Jerry Springer.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, not Jerry Springer. But I meant to say Jerry Lewis.
Yeah.
Because they were all over the place in time. I really appreciated how non-linear this show was, how it was just like you could take from any point in history and make it timeless. It was really creative with that. I get what you're saying too. I'm not arguing the point, because I think that we're both right.
Sure, absolutely.
It's a totally like complete, cycle with both points.
Well, it's subjective. It really is. It's just how you want to take the joke, and people are going to take jokes different ways. So you can look at it, one way, you can look at it another. So yeah, absolutely.
I think for me, it's more like the show Freakazoid could have done a better job of, it could have done better with itself as a whole if it had separated itself a little bit more from Animaniacs, because following that format, at least at first, didn't allow it to truly be itself. It took a bit before this cartoon had its own unique identity. And there were glimpses of that in the first episode. The unique Freakazoid brand of comedy was there for sure, but it was stronger in the second season. It was a stronger, like, more defined brand of comedy. And using the existing world or audience of Animaniacs was their way of bridging the gap with fans. It's sort of like saying, if you enjoyed that cartoon, you're going to love our new cartoon. And I think you can see what I mean there. I think that makes sense.
I would even argue that halfway through the first season, they were starting to find themselves. Because, like, you had some of, like, the other side cartoons, the different characters that weren't Freakazoid. Like, Lord Bravery pops up very quickly in the second episode, and we get a Lord Bravery cartoon. But, like, the Huntsman, we don't see him till, like, halfway through the first season. And we always see introductions like, okay, there's this Huntsman guy. When's he going to pop up? And finally, this character pops up, and we get, Huntsman episodes. And, of course, his gag, it's basically outside of Freakazoid itself, the Huntsman and Lord Bravery are two of my favorite gags in the show, because you've got the Huntsman is basically a straight up Charlton Heston impersonation. He's a Green Arrow, Robin Hood-esque superhero that basically there's never any crime. The city he's in.
Darn the luck, darn.
Crime today. Yeah. There's never anything for him to do. And then Lord Bravery, basically, that's Paul doing a spot-on John Cleese impersonation, and he's the very proper British superhero that no one in the world thinks this guy's a superhero. They all think he's pretty lame. And only Lord Bravery is the one who actually believes the fact that he's a superhero.
Well, he does get renamed. Do you want to say it?
Lord Smoked Meat and Fishes.
Smoked meat and fishes. Because the whole like trademark copyright thing was just phenomenal. It was just absolutely phenomenal.
And he couldn't use the name Lord Bravery because a bakery was doing it, and everybody kept thinking they could get a scone from him.
Like, I mean, you see this guy flying around in tights, and you think, oh, I want a scone. Well, he's kind of, he's got the stereotypical British sound, so I guess he might have a scone.
Oh, I love it. And then, of course, his theme is very reminiscent of a lot of, classic British musicals, and that's
bravery.
But yeah, a very Monty Python sort of feel to it. So those are two of my favorites in the Freakazoid universe there. And so I would always love to see more of them. But great
points,
stuff.
George. And and they did kind of reduce the use of those side characters in the second season. And I think they could have been used more. I think
Absolutely.
They would have been used more even if they had gotten a third season, because I don't think they were done with them. They just kind of like tabled that because they wanted a little bit more screen time for the main plot. And that makes more sense, like back then they were getting full half-hour stories and not just like 11-minute episodes, so they were like, you're gonna get more plot, and that's kind of what that was all about. Good points. Oh, Jiggy, yes, thank you for the reminder, little buddy. We are going to check in with a live chat right now. Hi, friends.
Jiggy's keeping you on time, man.
Yes, he is. He's really good at that. Aubrey says the Huntsman was hilarious. Yes. Yes, he was.
Hunt, he's the Huntsman. Oh,
and
love it.
Porcelain Piggy, or Little Toys Big Story, says, hey, guys. Hey, Jiggy. Jiggy says hi. And she also says, maybe a series of shorts for him would do. Okay, so that was for Ambush Bug. And Legion of Comics says that Ambush Bug was last seen in the Suicide Squad run.
Oh, that's right. He was, yeah.
And George,
that squad, yeah.
George, you live in a comic shop. You should know these things.
Well, I don't normally read Suicide Squad, so I do read some DC books, but I'm primarily a Marvel and independent guy. So.
Okay, no problem. No, we'll forgive you on that. We'll forgive you.
Thank you.
Aubrey earlier said it was supposed to be darker. I wonder what that would have been like if they had gone dark.
Probably not as funny, I can tell you that much.
Well, okay, so to be fair, Creeper was kind of funny.
Creeper's kind of funny, but he's he's supposed to be the funny guy, and then everything else around him is the straight man in the comedy duo. So,
okay.
But he's he's already kind of the darker, twisted character anyway, and everybody else is like, who's this guy, sort of thing. So that's always how he was treated, even though he's a crime fighter. Everybody was, even like the other superheroes are kind of just weirded out by him. They don't trust him, sort of thing like that. So I can't imagine Freakazoid as being a character similar to that,
Yeah, no, especially knowing what we have. I mean, we have the pleasure of being retrospective here. And it wouldn't work knowing what we actually do have. And, guys, get in the comment section. We'd love to respond to you. So thank you for being here. Those who are commenting and those who aren't, we would love to talk with you. It's called Cartoon Commotion because you are the commotion of Cartoon Commotion. So we would appreciate those comments. Real quick, though, I got to take a I got to take a second here to remind you, friend, whether it's live or you're catching the rewind, if you got homies who would totally vibe with a flashback to this radtastic 90s tune, do us a solid and slap that share button on your screen. Let's get them in on the action and crank this commotion up to the max. Alrighty, now getting back on track. So I follow a lot of the creative crew that made this series on social media. And recently, Paul Rugg, the voice of Freakazoid and writer for the show, he posted on Twitter that they started off their show strong, nice, and weird. And I agree. I think the trouble is that nobody really knew what Freakazoid was supposed to be, because, in fact, for years, I had this vague memory of a blue guy in a red suit that was kind of weird, and I think it was because of Kids WB bumpers or even WB ads on VHS tapes. Yeah. And that one crossover scene that he had, and I have a screenshot of it, he had this crossover in an Animaniacs episode. Do you remember this one, George?
I don't remember this one, no.
Okay, so this was episode 77 in their series. Okay. This was Pun for Hire. And I have shared this clip on Facebook, so if anyone's interested, I can share that clip again. That was called, this Pun for Hire. And I'll put that in I'll just caption it like Freakazoid cameo. You can also find it probably on YouTube, so if you're not patient enough to come to my Facebook page. He randomly comes into... I'm sorry, what?
Who could be impatient enough to not go to a Facebook page?
It blurped out again. I didn't hear it. I didn't hear it. It's like, who could? What?
Who could be impatient enough to not go to a Facebook page?
Oh yeah, come on, visit the Facebook page. We'd love to have you in the comment section. And we have a group. It's like I don't know the name. It's Cartoon Commotion Crew. So we have a group called Cartoon Commotion Crew over there, and you can join up there, post some classic cartoons. We could talk about it, 80s and 90s strictly. All right, but all over there on Facebook if anyone's interested. So again, this cameo, Freakazoid randomly comes into their show, and he asks Dot where the set for his own cartoon is. like he just suddenly forgotten where his set is. and then he acts weird, and he puts his face on the screen, and he puts his head near the water cooler and all these other kinds of weird positions, and then she tells him down the hall something, and he's like, thank you, and he just walks out. He looks like he's gonna dash out the door, but then he just walks out gracefully, just like dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. Yes, that's funnier.
And that's when Dot looks at the camera and she says, this is a zany episode. And as far as I know, this was the only time that Freakazoid actually made an appearance on their cartoon. And never again. Wasn't it really clever, though, for them to do these cross-promotional appearances, George? It was kind of like a superhero with very little fame, maybe making a cameo in another comic book, and then getting a whole bunch of recognition from doing that, getting noticed for that cameo. I just think that was
absolutely
flawlessly executed, but unfortunately missed by most, because you didn't even know that this happened.
Well, yeah, God, I can't remember. It's been years, really, since I've seen. I frequently revisit Freakazoid, but it's been a really long time since I've seen Animaniacs. So that's probably why I don't remember it. But
okay. That's fair.
But you're very right though about especially take DC Comics Presents was always Superman teaming up with another superhero, or Spider-Man had Marvel Team Up, and it was Spider-Man teaming up with another character, and it was an obscure character or a newer character we wanted to push a little bit more, and what better to put it with than with that company's A character. So in DC Comics, back in the day, it was Superman. It's now Batman now than Superman, but 70s and 80s, it was all Supes. And then basically, over Marvel, it was all Spider-Man. So, and it still is Spider-Man.
Do you hear that, DC Comics? Do you hear that? We need Ambush Bug with Batman right now.
That may have actually happened. You never know. There's probably, I don't know if there's a Brave and the Bold where they teamed up or what, but I guarantee you, they constantly would do team up books. So,
dude, the cartoon version of that would rock. I mean, I would pick that up in a heartbeat. what was it? I think 2018. Like, quite a few years after Batman the Brave and the Bold ended on TV, they came out with a Batman Brave and the Bold meets Scooby-Doo.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that was the greatest Scooby-Doo crossover I've ever seen.
Oh, no kidding.
Okay, so, like, I'm assuming maybe you've seen it? Maybe?
No, actually, I haven't watched any newer Scooby-Doo movies. I just, just haven't had access to them or whatnot. So
well, that one, that one is worth it,
nice.
man. That one is. Okay, so I'm assuming you know the originals. The original Batman,
yeah.
Scooby-Doo.
Oh, yeah.
So imagine them, but like on steroids.
Okay. Yeah, because, I mean, of course, yeah, as a kid, I remember those because they always would use, like, the Adam West Burt Ward voices, for them coming over. Because, basically at the time when those original episodes aired, the Batman show was still going. It's still popular.
Right.
But, as a kid watching those rerun cartoons, I still was aware of the Batman show, and I knew they had reruns somewhere or whatnot. So it was, it was still a reference that I got. It wasn't lost on me. But, yeah, it's kind of weird. Like, in today's, I mean, I have nieces and nephews, and when they were little, they loved the old Scooby-Doo cartoons. So they watched a lot of those Scooby-Doo movies, and they probably had no idea who Adam West and Burt Ward were. They definitely didn't know who the Harlem Globetrotters were, or the Gilligan's Island kids, or anything like that. So all that kind of stuff. But yeah, they still enjoy it, even though you may not know who Don Knotts is, kids.
Well, bringing it back to our topic, that's actually on topic, because in the same sense of the comics, bringing other characters into them to like revive them. It was the same thing that they did with Scooby-Doo. They would bring these sort of like, they're famous, but they've been off for a while, and they just kind of revive their appearance. Like, I loved that. I loved the Scooby-Doo mysteries. The Scooby-Doo movies were amazing. Yeah.
Well, they made good choices.
Jiggy has something he wants to say.
Real
quick. Oh, yes, Jiggy, I can agree with that. Freakazoid is a misjudged bit of creative genius. Where the Tick was a superhero satire, Freakazoid was a random symphony of chaotic comedy within the setting of a superhero cartoon. Most of the time, superhero stuff like supervillains and Calamity was just the scene dressing or the environment for the cartoon antics to play within. Can you dig that comparison, George? Anything to add to that?
I think definitely Freakazoid laid the groundwork for shows like South Park, for shows like Family Guy, that make pop culture references, that break fourth walls, or make side references to things or whatever else. And that's what Freakazoid did before anybody else. I mean, you had characters in comic books that were doing that, but as far as cartoons were, Freakazoid was the first.
You're cutting in and out a lot, George. I'm not sure if that's only on my end or...
I'm sorry, yeah. I hope that's... Am I better now?
It keeps coming and going, and I'm trying to respond, but it's like, it's very clippy.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. We can keep going. Hopefully, it'll be restored as we go. So, I see it like, on Freakazoid could occasionally be straight up evil, but then at other times they'd first sing a silly song and do a dance routine. And, you remember an episode where Freakazoid basically shames the Lobe, and then he tells him that his plan to turn everyone into clowns with a cloud was just like the worst, only to, like, after he leaves, praise his plan for how genius it was.
For one, just having a great character actor like David Warner voice the Lobe and be a human. This is the first time, like, I think, as far as I know, he did anything comedy. David Warner was known for being, a bad guy or being a dramatic actor or whatever else, and him just doing comedy and the supervillain and basically being kind of pathetic, loved it. I'm sorry.
I got most of that. It just keeps cutting in and out. I got most of that, Bran. I got most of that. That episode was called The Cloud, and it's an excellent example of the type of humor in Freakazoid and how he handles his villains compared to other comedic crime fighters. Am I right, Mr. Prime Fanatic?
Absolutely, yes. And the whole intro to The Cloud that was done very Hitchcockian sort of credits there, opening credits. So.
And we have a screenshot of the Loeb plotting, being all maniacal. And as you were attempting to tell us, the Loeb was voiced by David Warner, who
Yep.
people might be, he might be more well remembered as Professor Jordan Perry in TMNT 2, The Secret of the Ooze, live-action movie from 1991. Then he was also the voice of Ra's al Ghul, a major villain to Batman in the 90s cartoon.
Yep.
And I don't know if you touched on this, but because it kind of kept cutting in and out, but he passed away, sadly, in 2022, the year after Ed Asner, and it's a shame, because if there was a remake, it could never be as brilliant as this was. I mean, this is the kind of dynamic, this screenshot is the dynamic that Freakazoid had with the Loeb. Just how ridiculous they would treat each other, especially the Freakazoid towards the Loeb would just be the most insane dynamic. And then another perfect example is Gutierrez. I'm gonna pronounce this wrong. Can you pronounce it for me?
Gutierrez.
Gutierrez, thank you. So Gutierrez, he was basically Freakazoid's arch enemy, kinda. He was kind of the reason that Freakazoid became Freakazoid, but that's a whole nother thing. Loeb was basically his nemesis, but Gutierrez, am I pronouncing it correctly now?
Yes, you are, yes.
Gutierrez was literally evil.
Yes, and let's not forget Gutierrez, voiced by the great Ricardo Montalban. Yes.
And he had a moment where he kept trying to guess Freakazoid's weakness, trying other superheroes' weaknesses like kryptonite. And then I also have a screenshot here where he's using the color yellow. And he kept trying these other weaknesses only for Freakazoid to wind up telling him how to lock him up in a cage and also helping them build it.
Yeah. But then the joke later is that he's immediately able to get right out of the cage.
Oh, so, yes, but it's just this scene. This scene is just so perfect. It's like, you probably shouldn't have helped us build it either.
Yeah.
It was hilarious, and I love the other hero references so much. They knew how funny those weaknesses could be.
Well, the thing I love too about Freakazoid is that he doesn't fear any of his enemies. As a matter of fact, he basically, scolds them, makes fun of them, disrespects them openly, to the point where they're very frustrated by just his mere appearance being there.
That's true. Basically, in the opening credits, he says, drives his villains crazy because he's a lunatic. Like, that is the basic plot of every episode, but then they expand upon it with insanity, and it's awesome.
Yeah, well, like, even going back to the original episode, when he basically is fighting Cave Guy, and he doesn't throw a punch or shoot a beam out of his hands or anything like that. He literally lets Cave Guy do all the work and knock himself out.
That's right. He does.
Yeah.
And I mean, because Cave Guy, I believe the final blow was him pulling in the gym. He pulls down the hoop, and it hits him right in the head.
Well, he and Freakazoid are having a tug of war over it, and Freakazoid just lets go.
Yeah, he's like, okay, you win.
You win. Yeah, whack. And knocks himself out. It's like, he let Cave Guy do all the work. He did very little work to fight this guy, and he wins the day.
The unpredictable, non-sequitur comedy of this cartoon was unlike anything else WB was releasing at the time. And in fact, I'd say that this was unlike even the style of Animaniacs. The thing is, I think that was always the problem, really. Like, okay, so just in case anyone doesn't know what I mean when I say non-sequitur, the phrase comes from Latin and it means it does not follow. It's like when something is said that doesn't make logical sense, Picture this. Freakazoid and Cosgrove just randomly bailing on the plot to catch that bear riding a motorcycle. This breaks from the natural flow of the plot, and that's why I say that this show broke the mold and still managed to tell fantastic stories doing it. It's impressive how they were able to keep this flow going, even with all of these crazy off-the-wall gags. You know what I'm saying, George?
Absolutely. I think they even pulled a gag in a later episode where you're sticking with Cosgrove while Freakazoid goes off and does like all these amazing things, saves the day, fights bad guys, whatever else, and Cosgrove's just hanging out and waiting for Freakazoid to get done so they can go do fun stuff. But it's like he constantly keeps getting interrupted, trying to do fun stuff because Freakazoid's got to go off and do superhero things.
We're breaking up a little bit. We broke up a little bit at what he was waiting for.
Oh, sorry. Basically, Cosgrove's waiting around to do fun things. Freakazoid has to go
doing it
and
again.
do. Oh,
it's like as soon as you start talking.
Freakazoid basically trying to do superhero things, do his job. Is it breaking up again?
Every time you start telling us what it is. We are having some internet technical difficulties tonight. I'm very sorry, but unfortunately, George is still using dial-up internet, and it's just it's not connecting very well.
Right in the teeth there, eh?
But that's okay. That's okay.
That's a jarring sound.
We'll try to keep it going. We have a little bit more to talk about, but we're almost through it. So, real quick, let's check in with the chat. We've got another comment from Legion of Comics. He's saying that you are clear on this end, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that's just me. Sherry Edger says it's fine here, not breaking up at all. That's strange. Okay. Well, that's good to know. Then everyone else can understand you, but I can't.
Oh, good. Okay.
It's just me. Yeah, Toy Stalker's even like, he's fine. He's fine to us.
Cool. Okay. So yeah, everything's kosher on my end over here, man. So
yeah, it's only me that I cannot. For some reason, maybe my computer's on dial-up. That'd be weird with fiber, because if that's the secret to fiber, then we've gone back in time.
But is it soluble fiber, or are we just talking like complex fiber here?
Yeah, it broke up. It's all on my end. It's all on my end.
It's a really good fiber joke here, and
it was so perfect, and I didn't hear it at all.
Oh, I'm sorry, man. The audience at home,
okay.
though, they're hopefully they're enjoying it. So
I'm glad that everyone else can understand what you're saying, and it just makes me look strange.
That's okay. I mean, I'm talking to a cartoon. I'm perfectly fine with that. So.
Oh yeah, no, I'm fine. I'm fine being a strange one of the. That's my position.
Well, that's part of the reason why I'm on the show. I like strange things.
Right on.
I myself am strange and unusual.
Well, your tagline should be strange and unusual fanatic.
I like it.
This, so getting back on track here, we're wrapping things up. This cartoon, basically, it could never fit in with the others in that same lineup with the big wigs in charge. It didn't see its value compared to the other shows that were already killing it in those numbers. And I think it's safe to say that the audience also just didn't get it at the time. I think it's almost funny when people ask how a great cartoon died, because it's always one of these two things, usually. It's usually always. It's always one of these two things, executives and ratings. And this time, it was both. And
yeah.
So, could you agree with our analysis on this one, George?
Absolutely. I mean, there's nothing more than taking down a perfectly fine show, fine creative show, than a bunch of suits that just don't get it. That's been a problem with creative, things from the word go. Whether it's a cartoon, a sitcom, movie, whatever the case may be. So, yeah, I mean, I love this show because it's the weird kid. So yeah, I was with it. I appreciated what they were doing with us. But yeah, again, if the suits don't get it, then I guess, they move on to other things.
That is very well said. That is very, I dig it. And I actually heard all of it. It didn't break up once. Look at that.
Hey!
That's awesome. Before we move on to our closing thoughts, friends, seriously, we seriously love making this show for you. Jiggy and I do hardcore research, taking notes, and finding the values that you might have missed as you were growing up. And you can help keep the commotion fun-fueled and ad-free with your help. We cannot keep going without you. So if you can, please head on over to cartooncommotion.com, one word, and right on top is our Buy Me a Cookie page. And we have a little icon in the top right-hand corner of the video. It says Buy a Cookie, just as a little reminder. One word, cartooncommotion.com. And it's actually a Buy Me a Coffee page, but we changed it to Cookie because Jiggy and I love cookies. Yeah, I love cookies, but Jiggy loves them even more. You can donate one cookie at a time or subscribe for loads of super cool bonus content, and we'll give you a shout out in the credits of every show if you do. So thanks a bunch for being here with us. Because of you, our friends, you put the commotion in Cartoon Commotion. We couldn't have the show without you.
Yes, that is right.
Okay, so Freakazoid, with its brilliant and groundbreaking artistry, was truly a far-out gem. Despite being totally misunderstood, the misunderstood black sheep of the WB Toons lineup, it had the potential to win hearts if given a fair chance. Just like Tiny Toon Adventures, Pinky and the Brain, and Animaniacs, Freakazoid could have become a beloved favorite. And personally, I gotta say, I dig Freakazoid the most, at least a smidge more than the rest. In my opinion, it was the one cartoon in that lineup that truly broke the mold, taking everything that Tom Ruegger, Paul Rugg, and everyone else put into those cartoons and expanding upon it in ingenious ways. And, you know, Jiggy and I think that it was fantastic no matter what the cartoon had to say about itself in that Freakazoid and Friends song.
Again, it's just it's knowing its place in the world and being very proud of it. And
I can get behind that.
Yeah, and that's what I love about the show most. And I mean, it's the show that's aged the best. I mean, you know, Animaniacs and Tiny Toon Adventures and Pinky and the Brain were kind of fun, but it's like, you know, there's a lot of adult humor that you can grow up with in Freakazoid. If you got to go back and look at some of those references, you know, do some deep diving on things, but nonetheless, I think it aged a lot better.
I definitely think it was the most unique out of all of them because
absolutely.
It broke the mold, it broke the fourth wall in ways that the other shows did, but not. It pushed it beyond those boundaries that those other shows had, you know?
Yeah.
Definitely. But before we wrap things up real quick, we're jumping right back into the live chat. Sherry Edgen says, all around crazy fun show.
Oh, thank you, Sherry.
Sherry Edgen says, what? Animaniac? Yes, I really, really love Freakazoid. I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she also says definitely high fiber. She got your joke. I didn't get it. Callie Hawkins says just shared, and she shared a face with blue smiling. Sorry, George. What was that you were saying?
That's it. When you get to a certain age, Cade, as a human being, not as a cartoon, but as a human, you got to worry about your intake of fiber and whatnot. So yeah, I'm to that age now where I'm worrying about my fiber intake.
It's all prepackaged and planned for my diet, right?
Well, I mean, you're a cartoon. You can eat all the cookies you want. It's not like you're gonna gain weight or have high cholesterol. You're a cartoon.
I eat cereal.
Yeah, live it up, dude.
Legion of Comics says, just bought you and Jiggy a year's worth of cookies. Eat up, fellas. Whoa! Thank you so much, Legion of Comics. Very kind. Thank you. I'll be checking. That's awesome, man.
Nice. Thanks, Legion.
Be prepared for some bonus content. Awesome. And with that, we're jumping on over to our final thoughts. Background music. Friends, thank you bunches for being here with us. It's been a pleasure to revisit Freakazoid with you all, and thank you for joining us for this episode, George. Real quick, where can people find you on the web?
You can find me at Fanatic Forum. I am on Facebook and YouTube. So if you're looking for me on Facebook, I'm at George the Fanatic. And then on YouTube, just look up Fanatic Forum. I go live Fridays at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. My topics range from comic books, movies, TV, wrestling, video games, basically all things nerd. I have guests on a lot of times. The last couple of weeks I've been by myself, but we talk about all things geek. I love having folks come on, sharing your passions with me, opinions on things I'm talking about, or opinions on things I'm not talking about. We can have a non sequitur, talking about a completely different subject. That's what the show is all about. So come and join us.
Right on, right on. It's a lot like Freakazoid. I can dig it.
Yeah, we're all over the place.
And remember, folks, you can find Jiggy and myself over on CartoonCommotion.com and live on YouTube and Facebook 2 times a month. Our next live show is going to be on the lost legend that was Skeleton Warriors. Join us at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on September 16th of this year, 2023. And with that... Oh! I think Jiggy has one more thing to say before we go.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Wow.
Whoa.
Wow. I could not have said that better myself, Jiggy. Beautiful words have never before been oined with such passionate thought to the greatness that is Freakazoid.
I need a moment here. I mean, it's like... I've been in the presence of greatness. I've heard a lot of great things said, but it never ceases to, amaze me. And to Jiggy, I mean, wow, dude, let's drop the mic, buddy.
I would, it would be a tragic shame if anyone couldn't understand just such a marvelous sentiment that. But that's all the time we have for, so keep it unreal, Commotion Crew. But before you bounce off to something shiny out there on the interwebs, if you enjoyed this episode at all, just spread the word to someone who you know would dig it too. It only takes a couple seconds. You pop it up on Facebook, tag a homie, or just shoot your bud a message. Likes are cool and all, but if you want this show to blow up and stick around for the long haul, share it with your crew, and we can keep it unreal together. Like our far-out friendly show supporters help us every month. Eric Grant, Marsha Sullivan, Carrie Cube, Cade Utterback, and ToyStalker.com. And just in case you forgot, in the last 60 minutes, this show is brought to you by the fine folks at the Cereal Box Network, cerealboxnetwork.com. Play us out, Jiggy!